The following is a special video presentation of the Hennepin County Library.
Welcome to a discussion with Frank Pacetta. My name is Tom O'Neill, and Frank is the author of Don't Fire Them, Fire Them Up, a Maverick's Guide to Motivating Yourself and Your Team.
Tom, thanks for having me on.
Yes, you're welcome. Frank, you spent 2 years in Minneapolis with Xerox and were promoted to the Cleveland District office. Would you start by telling us a little bit about the situation at the Cleveland District in Xerox?
Sure. I was here in 86 and 87, and in February of 88, I got the opportunity to become the district manager in the Cleveland area. And they had struggled for about 2 years. Morale was down, and it was an excellent opportunity. I went to school in the area, and we went back down there and turned that district around from about 55th or 56th in the country to where we were back on top again by the end of the year. It took about 2 or 3 years to get the district exactly where we wanted, but we were able, with some of the things we talk about in the book, to turn things around almost instantly and get us back to doing business.
How long were you the manager in Cleveland then?
I was there about 4.5 years.
Okay.
And then I transferred down to Columbus, where my wife is from, and where I actually started with Xerox.
Okay, you have a reputation with Xerox as a maverick. Would you explain how you got that?
I think the Wall Street Journal gave me that reputation. We had such a good year in 1988 in Cleveland and 1990, which were soft years for Xerox, that a lady who had worked with me, and we do some crazy things, we have a lot of fun, and I think we have a real good work atmosphere where people enjoy coming to work. And a lady had transferred to Pittsburgh. Well, her friend's fiance was a writer for the Wall Street Journal, and said, hey, there's a kooky guy back in Cleveland. They're getting a lot of business, but they're having a lot of fun. You might want to go talk to him. And long story short, they did an article on us in the Wall Street Journal, and Simon & Schuster thought we had some great ideas that we should put into book form, and the rest is history. Okay.
I noticed one of the people that review your book on the back is Ross Perot. This seems an interesting choice.
Yeah, it was real interesting. Real fortunate with that one. And this was before he ran for president, and I'll tell you a true story. It was the morning that the Wall Street Journal came out, and it's amazing the power of that newspaper. And it was about 7:30 in the morning, and I had to put my speakerphone on because we were getting so many calls that were coming in because it was on the front page. So we're listening, and all of a sudden we hear, Frank Pacetta? And I said, yes, Frank Pacetta. And he goes, this is Ross Perot. And I had seen him on Larry King and knew who he was, and I said, yeah, right. You know, and if you know Ross, and a lot of you got to know him from the election, you know, he said, okay, call me right back. I thought you'd react that way. And sure enough, we called back, and it was Ross Perot. And he says, I want to come see you. So we set up a time, and he came into Cleveland, and I picked him up at the airport, and we were driving back to the house. He wanted to come to the house. And I said, Ross, why are you here? And you know, you talk, and we had great success, and I'd been a manager about 8 or 9 years, but you talk about how you learn things. He goes, when I see something I like, I go after it. If I think somebody can make an impact on my company or the companies that I own, I want to get to know them. Somebody who can show leadership skills. Then we went to the house and we spent some time at the house. He wanted to meet the kids, and we went to dinner. And we're going back to the airport, and I said, why did you want to come to the house? He goes, and there was some things in the article about family values, a lot of the things that I believe in. He goes, I wanted to see if you were who you said you were, and if you had some of those traditions and values that were for real, and I found out that you did. So we've kept in touch, and it's been it was interesting. And when we were doing the book, we sent him the first manuscript, and he endorsed it. Okay.
You were a sales manager, and your book deals mostly with sales. But I found it had some very interesting ideas to cover any area of management and other industries. Would you cover your methods of team building and how you surround yourself with good people?
Yeah, I think there's a difference between management and leadership. I think we have too many managers and not enough leaders. My belief, and this is why I think it transcends just sales, is that when you have people reporting to you, that's a responsibility. My job is to be sincere, trustful, and honest with you, Tom, and make you the best you could be at what you're doing, to coach, teach, and motivate you, instead of sit behind my desk and tell you what to do and maybe talk to you 2 or 3 times a year, and if I've got bad news, deliver that. I believe it's important that a leader communicates. We have a trinity of communications. I think you should show people after you hire them, show them what you expect, teach them training and doing the right things, and there are a lot of techniques in the book on that. Ask them. I don't know how you can learn anything unless you ask your customer or your employee, what do you think? What do you think will work here? What is it that the customer wants? And there's a great line in a Dirty Harry movie where Sergeant calls him in, and he was always, Sergeant was always mad at Harry. And he brings him in, and he's lecturing him, and he gets done, and he's sitting behind this big desk, and Harry says, you know, I don't give much credence to anybody whose butt is the same shape as their chair. You know, so we need to get out and be role models for the people, and now to do these things and to motivate people in team building. When they see you doing it, like when we went to Cleveland, I put a stake in the ground. I gave them a vision. I said, by the end of the year, the mistake on the lake jokes are going to be over, and we're going to be a very good district, not only numbers-wise, but you're going to be proud to work in Cleveland. People around the country are going to ask you, hey, what are you guys doing there different? You know, and you're going to be the first one off the plane with your fist in your saying, hey, this is great, and we're going to work together to get there. I never want a customer to complain that we had a lack of teamwork or that we weren't working together. So we kind of, and the third part of the communication is you tell them. You still have expectations. You still have to pay the rent. There still has to be accountability and consequences. I said, we're going to work as a team. If you get in the sandbox and play, you'll be okay. And there's two good reasons for teamwork. One, it's the best thing you can do for the customer. Right? We have so many great solutions in technology at Xerox that not one person can know it all. So if we work as a team, we're going to keep the customers that we have, and we're going to get even better customers. The other piece of teamwork is just imagine an atmosphere where you walk in, where you get along with people, and you're going to gain knowledge from them, and you have people who are helping you out. And you build a team. You know, with my staff, we spend a lot of time together. We get very involved on the family aspect of things. I want to know everything I can about them. I want to know what turns Tom on differently that might turn Frank on, and I want to get inside you and really get to know you. It takes a lot of time and energy, but I think that's some of the things that are missing. Those are things that's how my father operated and how I learned growing up. And one of my best mentors at Xerox was Tom Stewart, who's the CEO of the Bureau of Engraving, still here in Minnesota. I was not a very good manager as a district sales manager when I was here in Minneapolis, my first year, and then he took over, and I learned a tremendous amount from him. And you know, you learn a lot of what to do from your mistakes. And we went down to Cleveland, we were able to turn that around. And it's your job to mentor and to coach. The lady who's running the district here now, Mary Donato, worked for me as a sales rep in Columbus, and she's done a much better job here than I ever could have done. And it's great to see people aspire, so you shouldn't be intimidated to have people. I want people around me who can be better than me.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed in your book you really showed an interest in your employees. You made it fun for them to come to work, because that's part of your philosophy too, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you know, selling copiers, you know, can be, it's tough. You're going up against 15 or 20, it's not the most glamorous thing, and it's slushy out or it's hot out or whatever it is. And we try to make it fun. We just don't set a goal at the beginning of the year and say, hey, see you later. And we do a lot of different fun events. We sing happy birthday at the beginning of a month. Sounds corny, but it works. At the end of the year, we have an Academy Awards. Imagine the winner and his spouse are picked up in a limousine, and it's fully stocked, and they get interviewed, and they get up to give an acceptance speech. And we try to do a lot of little mini events during the year to keep them pumped up and enthused, and to tell them, thank you very much for the effort. The other side of it, it's not all happy gas. We're tough on our folks, you know, and they've got to get the job done. But if you go back to the hiring piece and you get the right people, how do you motivate people? First of all, you want people who want to be motivated. Most people want to win. Most people want to be on a winning team. Some people aren't willing to pay the price to be on that winning team, or are in a wrong position. You know, you may not want to fire somebody. They may have a better use in another position in the company. And as a manager, don't be afraid to have that conflict, to have that communication and that feedback. And those things work. You know, it's not always, you know, it's always a painful thing to do, to look somebody in the eye and say, hey, Tom, you know, you didn't get it done here, and we gave you the training to do it. But, you know, who wants to be surprised at the end of the year?
Okay, you talk about empowering your managers and your salespeople. Evidently you did it. What problems did that cause at the headquarters in Rochester, and how did you empower?
Well, you know, Xerox has been real good. You know, we've come a long way in the trust level and letting the district manager run their operation the best way they think they can, because we're the ones there. You know, what happens in Minneapolis may be different than what happens in Cleveland or Columbus or out in LA. But sometimes when you push back against the bureaucracy, you know, it causes some problems. But if it's right for the customer and it's right for the employee, then I think you owe it as a leader to go back and push those type things. I've got terrific managers in Columbus, had terrific managers in Cleveland, and I trust them. You go run your sales team. Here's the bottom line number I need from you. But the processes that you use and how you get there and how you manage your people, I'll teach and coach. But you go do it with your style. Don't be like Frank. Incorporate it into your style. And if you think something's right, then you negotiate that with the customer. And we're getting better at it as a company. And I think that's what makes Johnny run. When a rep or a manager feels like they're part of the decision-making process, or they had input in a decision, well, then they take some ownership. And it feels good. And then it's we instead of me, or hey, management screwed up, or Frank made me do this. So I think that's really important. I press really hard on that, and I would challenge people to set up their organizations to be that way.
Okay. Another idea I liked of yours was your view on the performance reviews on a monthly basis. Why did you initiate that?
Because I hate surprises. I think it's important. Part of my job to teach and coach is I want communication. I think that's the number one thing you can do. So at the beginning of and I want employee input. At the beginning of the year, the employee sits down with their manager, supervisor, and they sign a contract. They come up with, okay, here's some things you have to do, but let's talk about how you're going to get there. And they agree. Certain number of activities, timeliness, all that type of thing. Each month, they sit down with the employee and they review how you did. And they write in, hey, Tom, you had a great month. Here's some areas you can improve. Here's some things we're going to do. So I know my inspection process, I don't sit in on those, but I'll inspect to make sure it took place, that you got some feedback, that there was, and you had an opportunity to give your feedback back. And at the end of the year, the review isn't a surprise. You knew how your manager felt about you all year long. You knew where you needed to improve. To check and balance that, I meet with the employees 2 to 3 times a year individually. In my office, we'll sit down and we'll have a cup of coffee, and I want to know, hey, how's it going? What do you think of the contract that you cut with John? Are you getting what you need from your manager? What can your manager do to be better? So I want to know. I want to have the pulse of what's going on in my organization all the time.
Did you have the employees rate their managers or peer ratings also?
Yeah, Xerox has a employee survey, and the managers each year, there are 104 questions that are asked about the manager, and we take that very, very seriously. The manager is paid on how the results of their employee survey are, and if you don't do real good at it, the chances of you staying a manager aren't real good. So the employee does have quite a bit of say in Xerox, and we're real proud of that.
Yeah, another popular management concept now is total quality. And your book mentions several of the parts of Deming's program that you disagree with. Would you share them with us and why?
Some of the things I agree with, though, is if Xerox didn't go into quality in the late 70s and the early 80s, we'd be out of business. He turned what we learned, what he did in Japan, because we went and benchmarked Fuji Xerox, David Kearns, our CEO, did, turned our culture around. And I've been there 18 years, and I can tell you, Tom, we're a better company today because of it. A couple of things where I disagree. He doesn't believe in performance ratings and certain forms of recognition. I think it's important. The best times I ever had and the most I ever learned was growing up. In my house, there was recognition and there was consequence, and you knew about both. So, and he's a smarter guy than I am, but I think it's important to do reviews and let people know where they stand in writing. And I also think it's important to recognize people.
Okay, you stress customer satisfaction and say a salesperson shouldn't just satisfy, but they should delight the customer. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, a customer, if you're going to get the business, and Xerox is never the least expensive, but I think we make the very best product, and after 18 years, I'm still proud to say I'm Frank Pacetta from Xerox. And a lot of people watching might say, hey, I wish I felt that way about my company, and most of us do feel that way. It's a great place to work, great environment, they're good listeners, great product. Might be more expensive than the competition. I want that customer to feel like there's a value add of doing business with that rep. That rep's got to sell themselves and build a trust level with the customer. And then the customer may pay an extra $1 to do business with Xerox. And you do that by delighting them. You don't say, well, service will take care of this, or I'll have Frank call you back. It's one-stop shopping as far as I'm concerned. And we sell the customer what they need. We listen to what they say, and we sell them what they need, not what we need them to buy. And I think you should knock down walls. If a customer has an issue or a concern, we need to get back to them right away. And instead of lip-syncing customer obsession, we should make it a way of life.
It's part of your total value concept at Xerox then.
Yeah, it really is. And those things come from the top down at Xerox.
Okay. Your book contains a lot of ideas to motivate salespeople. Would you share some of them to us? Yeah,
the first thing is, and there's a lot of fun things in the book, there's over 250 tips, but the first thing is to get to know them. I want to know all about you, Tom. You know, the first thing you find, well, what motivates your people? Why don't you go ask them? So the first thing I'm gonna do, what does motivate you? You know, are you career oriented? Is money the most important thing? Do you want to stay in one place? Would you like to climb the ladder, overseas type thing? You know, is your family, you know, do you like your spouse to be involved in it? Tell me about yourself. So you learn about you learn what turns that individual on. And then instead of just having, you know, today's the recognition meeting, it's motivation. Or next week is Frank Pacetta, the motivational speaker's coming in, so that's a motivating thing. We try to make motivation, and I think it's pretty clear, an everyday part of our process. And sure, you have little trinkets and awards, but if you do something well, it's, hey, happy birthday, or a nice pat on the back, or I think you did a good job. You know what, Tom? You have huge potential in this organization. Those are the kind of things we want to hear, and that should be part of the everyday process. There are 13, there's a management test. We're in the middle of the book. I say, okay, stop, right? I say, stop the book and take this test. And the very first question to the manager is, did you recognize somebody today? Did you hug somebody? And I think that's important.
Okay. Are you using the same or similar techniques in motivation in Columbus District now?
Yeah, a lot of the same things. You know, and I spend a lot of time. I'm really into this leadership thing, so I'll read any book I can on leadership. But I also watch and listen. You'll glean things out of speeches, or a lot of things from sports, or politicians, or your mom and dad, or other people. And I ask a lot of questions. What do you do? So we're doing a lot of the same things. I'd like to think what we're doing in Columbus is an enhancement over what we've done in Cleveland. And you know, I've been around 18 years. I'm more and more want to empower and let the employee make the decision. And I'm getting better at letting go and letting them do that. And it's tough. That's a tough thing to do.
Okay. Was it 1990 you were #1 Cleveland District? Or
well, we were #1 in our region 3 times in Cleveland, and we just found out in January that we were the #1 district in the country in Columbus. So the stuff works.
Okay. I noticed the one year you were #1, and then you had a bad first quarter, and you had, what, May, June, or June, July sales splits?
We went into emergency action. You know, and one of the tips in the book is never assume anything, and when your organization's doing real well, get nervous, because now it's time to go to another level. And what we did was we did 2 things. We built tradition. It was called the Cleveland Classic, and we let the people come up with it. And we went into a 6-week ordeal where we had people from corporate coming and traveling, and it was a 6-week blitz is what we call it. And nobody was allowed in the office. It was everybody out in front of the customer, and we had, during the 6 weeks, little venues. If you made your goal during the first 2 weeks, you went to the Pacetta Open, and you got a day off, you played golf. You went the next 2 weeks, you could win some prizes, and at the end was a big tent party, just to add some fun and some spice. But more importantly, hey, here's the goal, we're about to fall short, we need everybody to raise the level, and we wound up having the best quarter we've ever had.
Okay, the other thing that I'm interested about your story about your cold sales and on new employees, how you start them out, and
oh, cold calling.
Yes, cold calling.
Yeah, cold calling, the root of all evil in sales. You know, you find out a lot about people. When we bring on a new person, they'll spend some of their first few months just knocking on doors. And they get knocked around a little bit, and that's good though. It's good for them to go out and learn how to handle customer objections. And what we try to have the managers do at the end of each day is give them feedback. Tom, here's what you did good on this call. Here's what you didn't do well. Because sales is a tough business, and you know, you're going to hear no a lot more than yes. So it's good for to throw them out there and let them get their feet wet, but then have them come back in and ask, what did you learn? What went well? What didn't go well? And then we want the managers to give them feedback on what they saw.
Of course, the time you went out with him and the first call of the day, you made a sale, right?
You know, you get lucky. It was unbelievable. I went out with a new rep. And the very first call we made was a small insurance company in Lorain, Ohio, which is about 30 miles west of Cleveland. And the very first call we went in order, you know, and all the young guys were back waiting, you know, to see if the old man came back with an order. They wanted to wear me out that day, knocking on doors, but we got lucky and got an order on the first call.
I'm sure they heard about that for a few weeks.
They're still hearing about it.
They're still hearing about it. You say you like grinders for your salespeople.
Yeah.
Could you explain that too?
Yeah, a grinder is somebody who just keeps going and has great resiliency, can you know, if they have a tough day, they're just going to come back at you the next day. They outwork and outthink the competition. They're just so focused that they're going to get it done. Those are the type of people you want. You'll find those people at their desk or in the field and not feeling sorry for themselves or you know, wondering, you know, how they're going to get around something. They go right through it. And those are the kind of people you want. People with that high energy, the good spirited, that, hey, you knocked me down, but I'm going to come back after you.
Okay. How did you get the three areas of the district to get together, the administrative, sales, and the service?
Well, Xerox really sets that up. We
Okay.
have partnerships, and we get paid congruently. You know, we don't have
Okay.
separate goals. So the partnerships is something we went to about 5 years ago, which has been a real home run for us. So I don't want to say it's easy, but we now get paid the same way. So when you match incentives, all of a sudden people become much better team players.
Okay.
So that helped a lot. The other thing is, when we get back to communication, when you show them and you ask, but you also tell them, we're going to work as a team, and we're going to watch you. You know, you must work as a team member. And I don't think it's unfair to say that. It's just like in football, but we are going to operate as a team. And if you think of the analogy, if you've got really good people, we talked about good hiring and surrounding yourself with the good people, and good leadership and good coaching, those are the teams that win.
You also mentioned recruiting, and that's something that has to be ongoing, and if you feel bad if you haven't recruited or interviewed somebody.
Yeah, I think it's the most important thing that we could do. And you know, we get so busy in our businesses that sometimes when we have an opening, you know, we try to get somebody hired quickly, and we may not have spent the time. My thing is to always have a flow of good candidates. I mean, we may bring 100 to 200 people through in the course of a year and only hire 2 or 3. And they have to get through all 8 managers, because I don't want Tom saying, you know, Frank, I told you when we interviewed, you know, I wasn't really sure about Valerie or whatever. And then I'm the final pass-through. And then we always challenge of today's group or this group that we've interviewed the last 6 months, is Tom as good, or does he have the potential to be as good as our best sales rep?
Okay.
So, you know, and a lot of times, you know, oh God, and that means if we say no, that means he's going to make us interview again. But that's what works. Good people make the difference, no question about it. And you have to take the time to do it.
Yeah, and you gave each of your managers veto power over that too, didn't
Absolutely.
you, in the selection?
If one person says no, the person's out.
Okay. What about benchmarking? You mentioned that quite a bit. Where do you benchmark? How do you benchmark?
I think benchmarking, of all the things that we learned from Deming and from the quality process, is the most important. Xerox does a lot of benchmarking to improve ourselves. We always try to peel back the onion. You know, the things that we're doing well, we talk about continuous improvement. We want to see somebody who may be doing it better than us, and we'll call or go find out what they're doing that's better.
Okay.
If we have an Achilles heel, we'll go find a district that's doing well in that area. Hey, tell us, show us your process. What are you doing? We'll steal it shamelessly. We won't use the same one, though. We'll steal an idea and then try to make it better and incorporate it into our style. We'll even take ideas from different industries, people who do different, you know, we'll call on an account and I'll notice the way the receptionist answers the phone. I say, boy, that was terrific. I like the way they did that at XYZ company, and come back and see if we can do it internally. So we're always struggling. I love to win, and I think there's a difference between good and great. And I think your energy should go into being great, because the bottom line is then you're taking care of your customer.
Okay. I noticed in one chapter you had a blitz on about replacing your competitors' machines. Is that something you continually do, or?
Yeah, we have there's an excellent process in the book. We want to know everything about the competition, where they are, and everything about our accounts. Our statement is, if it wiggles, hit it. So, you know, we're talking about people and fun and toughness and all that, but we also have a very, very strict process about how we go about knocking out the competition.
Okay. The other real plus about the book to me was all the tips, all the lists, and all the examples. So, and then the back of the book, it's easy to help write questions that you list every chapter and what the tips were. How did you come on that format?
I had Roger Gittins was the collaborator, and we had spent so much time, you know, and he, one day I said, you know, Roger, just in the second chapter, there's like 20 tips. So we said, let's summarize in the last chapter, and it's almost 300 tips, I think is what it adds up to. So if you want to just get a quick reference, I even find myself going back to it, because being a leader takes huge energy. You just don't become a leader and then it's okay, you're one forever. You keep working at it. So that's how we got the ideas, and if you see a tip you like, you can go back in an earlier chapter and see how it was actually put in place. I think one of the uniquenesses of the book is when I leave here today, I go right back out, you know, selling copying machines, unlike, you know, an Iacocca who's, I wish someday I had his talent, you know, who's already made it, or a PhD who's done research on a management book. This is real life stuff. This is stuff that's happening out there.
Yeah, you talk about surrounding yourself to go back with good people, and Xerox has a fairly hard way to terminate people too.
Yeah, we want to make sure through personnel and also through corporate that we give everybody an opportunity to succeed. You just don't, unless it's ethics, you cannot just walk in and Xerox, and we're very proud of this, and say, hey, Tom, you're out of here. We don't operate that way. There's a performance improvement process, which makes the manager get involved with the performance of the individual that may be lacking. And we'll give that person every opportunity to succeed. But on the other side of it, if you don't succeed, then we will face up and let you go.
Yeah, I think the other part that amazed me was the CEO has to approve terminations of over 5-year employees also.
That's correct.
How long has Xerox been doing that?
For as long as I've been there.
Okay, and that's been...
Right. 18 years.
18 years, okay. Okay, you had a fairly formal presentation of customer proposals. Would you tell us about that, and was that your idea, Xerox's, or...?
Well, it's things that I learned over the years from, from Xerox training, and also from, some of the better reps and things that worked. But the book goes into detail on, when you present a proposal to the customer, you're asking for the business, and it should be professional and it should be done right. And the book goes into detail how to perform or how to present the proper proposal. Not just handing a quote, or a price sheet. Because I want our people every time to differentiate themselves from the competition. Even if you lose that one time, I want that customer to remember how well we represented Xerox.
The other part of that was you get a lot of your information on your competitors from your customers too. Would you tell us on that?
Right. We have a major account process where we want to know everything, how long the competition's been in there, the expiration dates. We want to know, Tom, from the minute who creates the document to where it winds up.
Okay.
So, you build that kind of rapport with customers, and they'll be willing to share that information. And we just want to have as much intelligence about the account so we can sell the right solution to the account. And also give the account a vision down the road of what Xerox is coming out with.
Yeah, you have your 30, 60, and 90-day projections too. Could you explain that?
Yeah, I think what happens in sales too often, and I think our biggest success in Cleveland and Columbus, is our prospect base. I insist that they tell me about their business 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the road, not just what's going to happen next week or 30 days from now. I think if you can keep the boat full, you'll make it through the year and you'll be successful. So I don't want them just hanging on a big deal or celebrating their success in 1 month too often. So our 30, 60, 90 simply means we have prospects to fill the 30, 60, 90 day bin and beyond, so that we don't wind up going dry.
Okay, I'd like to thank you for being with us. This has been a discussion with Frank Pacetta, author of Don't Fire Them, Fire Them Up. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure.
A presentation of the Hennepin County Library.